Ancient Athens, which the American School studies, is really so vitally useful in so many ways to our modern problems. Now you take Athenian democracy, the glory of the world. The research I'm doing and others have done shows it's a more complicated issue, thank goodness.
The best source for the democracy of Athens and how the administration worked is Aristotle's Constitution of the Athenians. But once these excavations began, it's like having the pictures to a book.
It wasn't perfect, but no democracy since has been perfect. It's a very fragile thing, as we saw in Athens, and it's a very fragile thing now in Western Europe and in the United States. It continuously reshapes itself because it involves so many people.
When we think about ancient Athens, we have to think about the people.
I think what got me first of all was the ostraca. To see the names of these people written down, that was really thrilling.
One of the really striking features of the Athenian democracy was its participation by all the citizens. Government changed every single year, and it was an annual opportunity to throw anybody out of office. And that's ostracism. That takes its word from these broken pieces of pottery, and that was official. You were exiled for 10 years. So accountability is right there at the top, and it comes down to the lowest aspects of running the government. If you're in a monarchy or you're in an oligarchy, you may not want people to know what you've been doing, and you don't need a record of it. Once you get into a democracy, you have to keep a good record of everything to make sure that the state runs as it should. We have about 7,500 inscriptions, and they're wonderfully detailed. This one here, for instance, is concerned with the officials in charge of weights and measures. So you have here the names of 5 men that were going to guarantee that every citizen got the right amount of grain or number of nuts or whatever it was they bought. And so in one year, they served to keep track of the weights. And you see lead examples here. They have an inscription on them, tell you how much they weigh, but they also have a symbol. So if you don't read so well, you still know how much grain you should have gotten.
There's the wealth of the material culture, and there is also the literary wealth, plays, histories, and speeches, especially for the 5th and 4th centuries. And what is absolutely amazing about this combination of material is that it allows us to get a really good idea of how ancient Athenian people lived.
So that these guys here are all just little bronze tokens or lead tokens that were given out at the end of the day when the court was sitting. They would get a token which would allow them to turn that in for money. They were reimbursed for sitting in the theater, for attending the council, for being a member of the Senate that year. For democracy really to work, everybody has to be able to afford to do it.
In Aristophanic comedy, we see these political payments criticized consistently. And for a long time, people thought that, oh, you know, Aristophanes criticized those payments because he was also not fond of the democracy. But as research has shown in behavioral economics within the last 50 years, it is because incentives really do affect the way we think in terms of civic behavior.
The Athenians thought a lot about life and what they did, and they were able to express it and put it down in a way that practically no one else seems to have done.
And that meant a lot of regulation to make sure everybody performed competently and particularly honestly, because they were all on the same level as far as the system was concerned.
Everything is there that you can read about, but they actually did it. It wasn't just theoretical.
But guess what? It was a democracy that was a dictatorship of a small minority. Only Athenian citizens, that is, people born from mother and father who were Athenian citizens, had any voice, and only male. The overwhelming majority of the population, females, foreigners, slaves, had no voice whatsoever.
But this male citizen has got to be, he's got to be militaristic, he's got to be gymnastic, he has to keep away from craftsman-like arts if he wants to be, if he's ambitious and he wants to be highly reputable.
If you actually had to work for a living, farming was like acceptable as long as you didn't actually do any personal work and you supervised slaves and other people doing the actual farming.
In their texts, some people are talking about creation of profit and money-making as something that is distasteful, and it is something that is for people of a lower class, of a lower status, of a more base way of thinking. So if you extrapolate from that, you say, oh, the elites were averse towards making profit.
But guess what? Athens had a tremendous economy. It was the economic powerhouse in the 4th century BCE of the entire Eastern Mediterranean.
Έντουαρτ Cohen was actually a pioneer in showing that it was metics and manumitted slaves that actually engaged in very profitable activities, for example, banking.
The fact that Athenian male citizens disdained economic activity left a tremendous opportunity for everyone else who was resident in Athens.
As the center of town, the Agora would have attracted all inhabitants of Athens, but not all citizens. That is to say, women would be in here, slaves would be here, residents from other Greek city-states who spent time and money in Athens, and there would have been a lot of trading and necessity for coinage. This here is a lump of corroded bronze, very, very hard to make much sense of it all until they're cleaned up. But when they are, it turns out they are coins that were going to be minted, but they never actually got out of the mint. Several dozen of these little bronze flans, as they're called, were found in a building that was right underneath the Church of the Holy Apostles. For that reason, in the excavations all around there, we have reason to believe that we have one of the mints. But adjacent to it, you have this building here with very unusual installations. You see these large marble squares with cuttings in them that almost certainly meant they were intended to carry tables. The Greek word for a bank today is still a trapeza, which is the word for a table, and it looks as though here we might have one of the earlier banks of Athens right next to where the coins themselves were minted.
The Athenians invented the world's first private banks. The greatest bank was the bank that started with Passion, a slave. He left his bank and his wife to his chief slave. So we can trace over a period of 100 years the history of a single Athenian bank, the wealth that it accumulated, the huge loans that it made, the impact it had on Athens, and all this was being done by slaves. Now, don't get the wrong impression. I'm not suggesting that every Athenian slave was a wealthy banker, far from it. But it's a dimension of Athens that you really have to study.
How the first democracy of the world changed and evolved through its long life allows us to see examples of behavioral evolution that we can study and actually see what we can do to make our democracies nowadays better. So classical studies can actually show a way of how our historical understanding is illuminating the way we can go forward.